Welcome to the Chinese Lore Podcast, where I retell classic Chinese stories in English. This is episode 26 of Journey to the West. Last time, while taking a break at the Five Villages Abbey on Longevity Mountain, Sanzang's disciples got up to some shenanigans and ate several ginseng fruits, the abbey's heirloom treasure. When the two acolytes watching the abbey found out, they went ballistic and gave the pilgrims a tongue lashing. That ticked off Sun Wukong, who secretly slipped away during the haranguing and uprooted the whole ginseng fruit tree so that nobody could have any more ginseng fruits. When the acolytes found out, they locked the pilgrims in the parlor so that they could be dealt with by the master of the abbey, the powerful Zhenyuan, when he got back. But before that could happen, Sun Wukong used a little magic, put a sleeping spell on the two acolytes, and got the whole gang out. The pilgrims then resumed their journey west. They traveled non-stop through the night. When dawn broke, they finally started to breathe easier. Sanzang now chided Wukong. "You scoundrel ape, how you have made me suffer. Because of your mouth, you have made me travel all night without sleep." "Master, let's not play the blame game," Wukong replied. "It's getting light out. Rest here in the woods for a bit, and then we can resume." So Sanzang dismounted and sat down, leaning against a pine tree. Sha Zeng put down the luggage and dozed off against it, while Zhu Bajie snored against a boulder. Sun Wukong, meanwhile, leaped up into a tree and rested as well. After a while, an itinerant Taoist priest appeared over the hill. He wore a robe that seemed cobbled together from 100 patches, fastened with a sash around his waist. In one hand, he held a flowing whisk, and in the other, he tapped a gentle beat on a fish drum. He wore straw sandals and a headscarf. As he walked, his sleeves fluttered like wings in the breeze, and he sang a song toward the heavens. When he passed the tree where the pilgrims rested, this priest raised his hand and greeted Sanzang, and Sanzang hurriedly returned the greeting. "Elder, where are you from? Why are you resting here?" the priest asked. "I am a scripture pilgrim heading west on the command of the Great Tang Kingdom in the east," Sanzang said. "We were passing through here and took a break." "Oh, you came from the east? Did you by any chance pass by my pitiful mountain?" "Which one is your honorable mountain?" "My humble abode is the Five Villages Abbey on Longevity Mountain." Uh-oh. When Sun Wukong heard that, he quickly cut in and said, "Oh no, we came via another route." But the priest pointed at him and laughed. "Damn monkey, who are you trying to fool? You knocked over my ginseng fruit tree and then sneaked away in the middle of the night, and yet you still refuse to confess. Don't run, give me back my tree." So yeah, this was none other than Master Zhenyuan, the owner of the ginseng tree, coming to collect. When he got out of the lecture in heaven, he came back to Five Villages Abbey and found the front doors wide open, and the grounds were all clean. "Wow, clear wind and bright moon are really dependable," Zhenyuan said of the two acolytes that he had left in charge. "Usually, even when the sun is high up in the sky, they would still be asleep. But while we were gone, they actually got up early to open up and sweep the grounds." But when he and his disciples walked into the main hall, they saw that no incense had been lit and there was no sign of anyone. "Maybe the two of them stole the abbey stuff and ran away while we were gone?" the other disciples speculated. "Nonsense," Zhenyuan chided them. "Those who pursue cultivation of immortality would never dare to harbor such wicked intentions. They probably forgot to close the doors last night when they went to bed, and they haven't gotten up yet." So they made their way to the two acolytes' room. The door was shut, and they could hear loud snoring inside. The disciples banged on the door and shouted, but there was no response from within. Finally, they pried open the doors and even dragged the two dozing acolytes off their beds, but they still did not wake up. Zhenyuan chuckled. "Look at these two. Those who become immortals have a full divine spirit and no longer think of sleep. How can they be so tired? Could someone have done something to them? Quick, fetch me some water." One of the disciples brought over a cup of water. Zhenyuan muttered a spell and then sprayed a mouthful of water on the two sleeping acolytes' faces. Only then did they start to wake up. When they came around, they rubbed their drowsy eyes, looked up, and saw their master and fellow disciples standing over them. They immediately fell to their knees, kowtowed, and cried, "Master, your old friend, those monks from the east, they were a bunch of vicious crooks." Zhenyuan comforted them and told them to recount what happened, slowly. Clear Wind said, "Not long after you left, a monk from the east indeed came by. There were 4 of them, 5 including the horse. And hey, little white dragon must be feeling seen right about now." Anyway, Clear Wind continued, "We followed your instructions. After we ascertained their identities, we harvested 2 ginseng fruits and presented them to him. But that monk is a foolish mortal and did not recognize our treasure. He said that they were 3-day-old infants and refused to eat them. So we each ate one. But who knew that there was a certain Sun Wukong among his 3 disciples? First, he stole 4 of the fruits and ate them, and then, when we confronted them and spoke to them plainly, he couldn't take it. He used some magic and... oh god." When they got to that part of the story, the 2 acolytes started weeping and couldn't go on. The others asked them, "Did that monk beat you?" "No, he didn't beat us," Bright Moon said, "but he knocked over our ginseng fruit tree." Zhenyuan was irate. He told the acolytes, "Don't cry, don't cry. You aren't aware of this, but that Sun Wukong is a rogue immortal. He once caused a ruckus in heaven and possesses great powers. And now he's knocked over our tree. Would you recognize those monks if you saw them?" Clear Wind said yes, so Zhenyuan told him, "In that case, come with me. As for the rest of you, prepare the instruments of torture. When I get back, we'll beat him." So while the other disciples prepared the torture devices, which honestly doesn't sound like something you would expect to find at a Taoist immortal sanctuary, Master Zhenyuan and the 2 acolytes took to the sky in pursuit of the pilgrims. In the blink of an eye, they had traveled 350 miles. Zhenyuan looked westward from the clouds, but did not see any sign of his quarry. Then, he turned around, looked east, and realized that he had overshot his target by about 300 miles. Even though the pilgrims had traveled through the night, they had only covered about 40 miles. So Zhenyuan turned around and retraced his steps. When he was almost all the way back at his abbey, the acolytes called out, "Master, that's the Tang monk sitting under that tree by the side of the road." "I see him," Zhenyuan said. "You guys go on back first and prepare ropes. I will capture them." So he descended from the clouds and turned into an itinerant priest to engage the pilgrims. And it did not take long for things to come to a head. As he confronted Sun Wukong, the latter grew angry, pulled out his golden rod, and took aim at Zhenyuan's head. Zhenyuan quickly dodged the blow and soared into the sky. Wukong followed him into the clouds and saw that Zhenyuan was no longer sporting the shabby appearance of an itinerant priest. Instead, he now wore a purple gold crown and a crane-patterned robe tied around his waist by a silk ribbon. He had the body of a youth and the face of a beauty. 3 whiskers fluttered beneath his chin, and his eyebrows resembled the plumes of crows. Wukong continued to attack with his golden rod, and Zhenyuan parried a few of the blows with his jade whisk. Then, Zhenyuan showed his stuff. Summoning a spell called Universe in his Sleeve, he merely waved his arm, and his sleeve became huge and enveloped all the pilgrims, including their horse. "Ah, crap! We're trapped in a laundry bag!" Zhu Bajie cried. "No, dum-dum, we've been scooped up into his sleeve," Wukong said. "Well, that's no problem. I'll make a hole with my rake and we can slip out. We can just say that he was not careful and didn't trap us tightly enough." And so Dum-Dum started raking at the inside of the sleeve, but of course he couldn't even make a dent. He raked until his hands grew tired, and the sleeve remained as hard as steel. Meanwhile, Zhenyuan flew back to the 5 Villages Abbey. He sat down and told his disciples to bring ropes. Once the disciples were gathered, Zhenyuan reached into his sleeve, plucked out Sanzang, and had him bound to a column in the center of the hall. He then plucked out the other 3 pilgrims one by one and had them each tied up to a column as well. He then took out the horse, had it hitched outside, and gave it some grass. I bet this was the first time that little white dragon was glad everyone thought of him as just a horse. And finally, Zhenyuan pulled out the pilgrim's luggage and tossed it on the steps. "Pupils, these monks are men of religion, so we cannot use blades against them," Zhenyuan said. "Bring out my leather whip and give them all a good flogging so as to avenge my ginseng fruits." His disciples hurriedly brought out a whip. Now this whip was not made from cowhide, goat skin, or any other kind of normal animal skin. Instead, it was made from dragon skin and sported 7 thongs. Zhenyuan had the whip soaked in water, and then ordered a strong disciple to wield it. "Master, which one should we flog first?" the disciple asked. Tang Sanzang acted unworthily as the leader of his party. "Flog him first." When Sun Wukong heard that, he thought to himself, "My old monk can't take a beating. If he gets roughed up from a round of flogging, the fault will be mine." So he quickly piped up and shouted to Zhenyuan, "Sir, you're mistaken. I was the one who stole the fruits. I was the one who ate the fruits. I was also the one who knocked over your tree. Shouldn't you flog me first instead of him?" Zhenyuan chuckled. "Well, this damn monkey talks a good game. All right, flog him first." "How many lashes?" the disciple asked. 30, to match the number of ginseng fruits." So the disciple swung the whip and started going to town on Sun Wukong. Wukong kept a close eye on where his lashes were landing. When he saw the whip coming at his legs, he muttered, "Change," and turned his legs into iron. The disciple delivered one lash after another, but Sun Wukong felt nothing at all. By the time the flogging was over, it was already near noon. Now, Zhenyuan commanded his disciple, "We still need to whip Sanzang for not instructing his disciples properly and allowing them to run rampant." So the disciple with the whip started to approach Sanzang, but Sun Wukong again shouted to Zhenyuan, "Sir, you're mistaken again. When I stole the fruits, my master was wholly unaware. He was in the parlor, talking with your acolytes. My brothers and I were the ones who did the deed. Even if you fault him for not instructing us strictly enough, as his disciples, we should take the punishment on his behalf. You should just flog me again." Zhenyuan laughed. "Well, this damn monkey may be shrewd and treacherous, but he does show some filial piety. All right then, whip him again." So the disciple gave Sun Wukong another 30 lashes. By the time he was done, Wukong's legs glowed like mirrors, and yet Wukong felt not even so much as an itch. It was now getting late, so Zhenyuan said, "Soak the whip in water overnight. We will flog them again tomorrow." His disciples did as he instructed, and then all went back to their rooms to eat and go to sleep. In the hall, Sanzang wept and chided his disciples. "You 3 caused this calamity, and yet even I have to suffer. What should we do?" "Master, forget who's to blame for now," Wukong said. "I was the one who took all the lashes. You didn't suffer any floggings, and yet you're the one moaning and groaning." "Even though they didn't whip me, I'm still sore from being tied up," Sanzang said. "Master, we're also tied up here alongside you," Sha Zeng chimed in. "Okay, enough complaining," Wukong told them all. "We still need to travel in a little bit." "Brother, there you go again," Ba Jie griped. "We're all tied up with wet ropes. It's not like before, when we're just locked up in a room and you could just use a little magic to undo the locks." "Not to brag, but who's afraid of their soaked ropes?" Wukong said. "Even if they are cables as thick as a bowl, they will be useless." As they chatted, the rest of the abbey soon fell into silence as everyone else went to sleep. And now, Sun Wukong shrank his body so that the ropes fell right off of him. "Master, let's go," he said to Sanzang. "Hey, brother, save us too," Sha Zeng said. "Not so loud," Wukong said as he untied his companions. They tidied up their clothes, retrieved their horse and luggage, and slipped out of the abbey. Wukong then told Ba Jie, "Go to the cliff and bring back 4 willow trees." "What do you want with those?" "I have my uses for them. Just hurry up and get them." So Ba Jie went over to the trees, used his snout to dig up 4 of them, and carry them over. Wukong stripped the branches off the trees and told Ba Jie to tie the trunks of the trees to the columns in the hall. He then muttered a spell, bit his tongue, and sprayed blood on the trees, shouting, "Change!" In the blink of an eye, where there were once 4 willow tree trunks, there were now 4 doppelgangers in the exact likeness of the 4 pilgrims, trussed up to the columns. They even answered when you talked to them. This done, Wukong and Ba Jie caught up to their party, and they once again fled through the night. When dawn came, Sanzang was starting to doze off on his horse. Wukong saw this and shouted, Master, you're so useless. Monks are supposed to be able to tolerate suffering. I can go 1,000 nights without sleeping and not feel tired. Alright, come on down off that horse. Don't let others see you dozing off and laugh at you. Let's rest in a quiet spot under that hill, and then keep going. Meanwhile, back at the abbey, Master Zhenyuan rose with the sun, had breakfast, and got back to the business of flogging his prisoners. He said, "Today, it's Tang Sanzang's turn." The disciple with the whip walked over to Sanzang and said, "I am going to flog you now." "Go ahead," the willow doppelganger of Sanzang replied. So the disciple gave Sanzang 30 lashes. He then walked over to Zhu Bajie and gave him 30, followed by 30 lashes on Sha Zeng. Finally, he walked over to Sun Wukong's doppelganger and started flogging it. At that moment, on the road leading away from the abbey, the real Sun Wukong suddenly shivered and said, "Uh-oh." "What's wrong?" Sanzang asked. "I turned 4 willow trees into doppelgangers of the 4 of us. I figured that since they whipped me twice yesterday, they won't flog me today. But now they are flogging my doppelganger. That's why I'm shivering. I need to stop that spell." So he muttered an incantation and canceled the spell. Back at the abbey, the disciple doing the flogging was so shocked that he dropped the whip and reported to Zhenyuan. "Master, I started flogging the monks, but then they all turned into willow trees." Zhenyuan chuckled and said, with a hint of admiration, "Sun Wukong, what a monkey king! I heard that when he turned heaven upside down, they laid down traps everywhere and still couldn't catch him. I can see why. Well, if you wanted to flee, so be it, but why did you have to tie up those willow trees here and lead me on? I can't spare him. I will chase him down." As he spoke, Zhenyuan soared into the clouds and looked west. He saw the pilgrims traveling along the main road, so Zhenyuan descended and shouted, "Sun Wukong, stop! Return my ginseng fruit tree!" "Ah, crap! Our nemesis is here again!" Zhu Bajie shouted in alarm. "Master, forget about mercy for a moment," Sun Wukong shouted to Sanzang. "Let us commit some atrocities and finish him off so that we can get away." Sanzang hesitated and did not give an answer. Meanwhile, his 3 disciples brandished their weapons, flew into the air, and surrounded Zhenyuan. But even though it was 3 on 1, Zhenyuan parried their attacks without breaking a sweat. After about an hour of this, he once again called on his magic sleeve and scooped up all the pilgrims once more. Moments later, Zhenyuan landed back at the abbey and once again pulled out the pilgrims one by one from his sleeve and had them all bound. This time, Sanzang, Zhu Bajie, and Sha Zeng were tied to trees in the courtyard, while Sun Wukong was trussed up on the ground. "Well, looks like he's going to interrogate me," Sun Wukong said. Once the prisoners were all tied up, Zhenyuan ordered his disciples to bring out 10 bolts of cloth. "Hey, Bajie, this gentleman is so kind, he wants to make clothes for us," Wukong joked with his fellow disciple. When the bolts of cloth were brought out, Zhenyuan commanded, "Wrap Tang Sanzang, Zhu Bajie, and Sha Zeng in the fabric." As the disciples busied themselves wrapping up those 3 pilgrims, Wukong chuckled. "Ah, great, we're about to be buried alive." Once the wrapping was done, Zhenyuan told his disciples to bring out some homemade lacquer and cover the 3 wrapped pilgrims in lacquer, leaving only their head and face exposed. Now, this is just getting weird as far as punishments go. "Hey, mister!" Bajie shouted toward Zhenyuan. "It's fine if you want to cover up my head, but leave a hole at the bottom, just in case we need to relieve ourselves." Zhenyuan ignored him and told his disciples to bring out a big cauldron. "Hey, Bajie, isn't this great?" Wukong joked again. "They're setting up a cauldron to cook for us." "Oh, just as well," Bajie said in all earnestness. "Give us some rice, so we can at least die with full bellies." As they chattered, the disciples set up the cauldron and started a roaring fire under it. Once the cauldron was nice and scalding, Zhenyuan told his disciples, "Fill the cauldron with clear oil. Once it's hot, toss Sun Wukong in there and fry him, so as to avenge my tree." Wukong, however, secretly rejoiced and said, "This is perfect. I haven't had a bath in a while, and my skin was getting itchy. A good hot soak will feel great." Within moments, the oil in the cauldron was bubbling. Now, despite all his joking around, Wukong was actually wary of being tossed into the cauldron, since he didn't know if this was a magical cauldron or something. So he looked around and saw a stone lion statue standing to the east of the terrace. He rode in that direction, bit his tongue, sprayed some blood on the statue, and shouted, "Change!" Just like that, the lion turned into Sun Wukong's doppelganger and lay there tied up. The real Wukong, meanwhile, secretly slipped away and flew into the clouds to watch the fun. When the disciples told Zhenyuan that the oil was boiling, Zhenyuan told them to chuck Sun Wukong in. 4 disciples went over to pick up Sun Wukong from the ground, but they couldn't even move him. So 4 more came over to help, and then 4 more, and still they couldn't lift him up off the ground. "This monkey won't budge," they exclaimed. "He may be little, but he's really solid." Eventually, 20 disciples huffed and puffed and managed to pick up Sun Wukong. They carried him over to the cauldron and tossed him in. There was a huge crash and a big splash, and a ton of oil splattered out, leaving scald marks on several disciples' faces. "The cauldron is leaking! The cauldron is leaking!" the disciple watching the fire cried out. Before long, all the oil leaked out from the bottom of the cauldron. When the disciples went over to take a look in the broken cauldron, they saw that instead of Sun Wukong, there was a stone lion. "Damn monkey, how rude you are!" Master Zhenyuan fumed. He pulled his dirty tricks again. "If you want to flee, then just flee. Why did you have to bust up my stove? This damn monkey is impossible to catch. It's like trying to knead sand, play with mercury, snatch shadows, or catch the wind." "Fine, let him go. Take down Tang Sanzang, set up a new cauldron, and toss him in there to avenge my tree." As the disciples busied themselves carrying out this new order, Wukong heard everything from the air and thought to himself, "If my master ends up in the cauldron, he will die in an instant, get charred in 2, and disintegrate in 5. I have to save him." So he quickly descended from the clouds, greeted Zhenyuan, and said, "Don't tear up your cloth. I've come to jump into the cauldron." Caught off guard, Zhenyuan cursed him. "Damn monkey, why did you bust up my stove?" "Heh, it's your bad luck that you ran into me. Why is it my fault? I was going to take you up on your gracious offer of a hot oil bath, but I had to use the bathroom. I didn't want to go in the cauldron and spoil your oil, because then you can't cook with it. Okay, I'm all good on number 1 and number 2 now. I'm ready to go into the cauldron. No need to cook my master, just cook me." Zhenyuan chuckled, walked out into the courtyard, seized Sun Wukong by the arm, and said, "I know you've got skills, and I am aware of your reputation. But today, no matter how many tricks you play or how high you soar, you cannot escape my clutches. Even if we go all the way to the west to see your Buddha, you would still need to return my ginseng fruit tree. So cut it out with your tricks." Wukong laughed. "Listen to you, you're so petty. If you just wanted your tree to live again, that's no problem. If you had said so sooner, it could have saved us all this bother." "I won't squabble with you. I am willing to spare you." "How about you release my master, and I'll bring your tree back to life?" "If you have the power to revive my tree, then I will become sworn brothers with you." "No problem," Wukong declared. "Release them, and I will revive your tree." Zhenyuan figured that these guys couldn't escape him anyway, so he immediately ordered his disciples to release the other 3 pilgrims. Once freed, Shazeng said to Sanzang, "Master, what trickery is Brother Sun up to?" Zhu Bajie cut in and spouted, "What trickery? It's called putting on a good act. The tree is dead. How can it be brought back to life? He's just stringing everybody along. He's going to pretend to go look for a cure for that tree, but he'll slip away, never mind what happens to you and me." "No, he would never abandon us," Sanzang said. "Let's ask him where he would go to find a cure." So he called Wukong over and asked, "How did you trick that immortal into letting us go?" "It's no trick. I meant every word," Wukong said. "Then where are you going to find a cure?" "As the ancient said, the cure comes from the sea, so I'm going to go to the vast ocean in the east, scour all the islands and continents, and seek out all the sages and immortals to find a cure for reviving the dead, so that I can bring his tree back to life." "How long will you be gone?" "Oh, just 3 days." "In that case, we will do as you say," Sanzang told him. "You have 3 days' time. If you come back in 3 days, then all is well. But if you don't, then I am going to recite the band-tightening spell." Got it, Wukong reassured him. He then tidied up his clothes, walked over to Zhenyuan, and said, "Sir, don't worry, I'll be back soon. But you must treat my master well. You must not neglect the usual 3 tea services and 6 meals each day. If you do, I'll come settle the score with you and poke another hole in your cauldron. If his clothes get dirty, have them washed. If he shows any sign of hunger, that won't fly with me. If he looks skinnier, I won't leave." "You go on. I'll make sure he won't go hungry," Zhenyuan reassured him. And with that, Sun Wukong somersaulted into the air and flew east. To see where he will find this miracle cure, tune in to the next episode of the Chinese Lore Podcast. Thanks for listening.